Justice Buyiseli Madlanga, the chairperson of the Madlanga Commission, they are ruling that today's hearings will be in camera. In other words, they won't be open to the public. And it seems the reason in the main is because of the substance, the content of this testimony, more than the identity of the person who will be delivering that evidence, if you know what I mean. So it seems the inquiry is less worried about who the witness is and more concerned about what they're likely to say. And so far, we know that whatever that evidence is, it will involve content to do with ongoing investigations. In fact, the chairperson of the inquiry saying at some point that people are implicated, and in some instances, it's people who we haven't heard about before. So new names may very well come out of this particular evidence. Still unclear, of course, what the evidence itself will be, but the media respondents, that's News 24 and Daily Maverick, have not pushed back or opposed that application. Kenny Mapanga is our senior reporter who's been keeping a close eye on the Madlanga Commission since it began last month. And Kenny, of course, we've arrived at a point which we knew was going to happen at some stage, given the terms of reference of this inquiry.
Well, good morning to you, Ayanda. We've just seen the ruling from the Madlanga Commission that confirms that today and tomorrow, these witnesses that are scheduled to appear before the Commission will do so in camera. Remember, Phase 1 did state that they would be calling PKTT members or members of law enforcement that are directly involved in the operations of these ongoing criminal investigations that law enforcement is currently undertaking. And Lieutenant General Mkwanazi did go into some detail as to some of these investigations being ongoing, and that some of these investigative methods and information such as that in terms of operations could not be made public. So because of that fact, you have seen that the Commission has ruled that these witnesses that are going to appear over the next 2 days will be those in-camera witnesses. The media houses, News 24 and Daily Maverick, have accepted that these witnesses have to be in camera and will not be able to appear in the method that we saw on Tuesday. But once again, it is about the procedural approach, Ayanda, that the Commission takes. You saw the process to determine this issue done in an open manner, where the public is able to get an understanding as to what kind of witnesses are going to come, the subject matter that is going to be discussed, and why they cannot appear before the Commission in public hearings. So here, it's not so much about the identity of the witness, but the subject matter that they're going to be delving into. And because of that reason, the Commission will have to sit over the next 2 days with in-camera testimony. And how we'll get access to that at a later stage seems to not be a problem for the Commission. But for now, we won't get the nitty-gritty of those details that go directly into the operations, the investigative methods, and the ongoing criminal probes that law enforcement agencies are currently undertaking in the midst of these allegations of criminality, political interference, and corruption in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and I think, Kenny, part of what the chairperson said, I think, is quite important to emphasize. Even though we know the media respondents aren't opposing this application, the inquiry has made this decision, says the chair, based on their own assessment of the situation.
Indeed, there was an application that was filed by the evidence leaders where they listed 4 principal grounds to support why these in-camera hearings need to take place. Remember, there were 2 classes of witnesses that were going to come, the anonymized witnesses, and then, of course, these very important in-camera witnesses, where you cannot risk that possible harm that could take place if these witnesses were identified or if the subject matter was put out in the public. We already saw on Tuesday that the draft order, the agreement that was reached between the 2 parties, the 2 opposing parties, was with relation to those witnesses that were going to be anonymized or they were going to give their evidence through an intermediary. That is the second class of witnesses. It was always understood from Tuesday that the Commission had several witnesses that they wanted to call to be in camera, and there was no agreement with respect to those witnesses. That issue was still hanging in the balance when we adjourned on Tuesday to return today on Thursday. It is now clear that the position by the evidence leaders remains unchanged, that these witnesses need to be in camera, and this is about the subject matter, not so much the witnesses themselves, which is something that is accommodated for in the terms of reference. And it is against that backdrop that the Commission makes it clear, or the chairperson and co-commissioners make it clear, that it was a decision based on the evidence, or rather the papers that had been put forth by both parties, considering the arguments that had been raised by both parties, which is safeguarding the safety of these witnesses, and then of course the principles of open justice and media freedom. We have seen the Commission go to lengths to ensure that there's a balance between those two competing rights, but of course with respect to those in-camera testimony that they're going to hear for the next 2 days, it's become clear that that evidence cannot be out in the public domain at this stage. So it is against that backdrop and on the evidence on the papers that the Commission reaches this conclusion.
So that brings us to the end of the week, essentially. But we heard from Matthew Chaskelson there, Kenny, saying that if the evidence leaders intend to continue with this method, I think he spoke of a 72-hour notice.
Yes, indeed, because remember there was this issue of the procedural approach that the Madlanga Commission must take when it's dealing with in-camera witnesses. The main issue or objection by the media houses is that you can't have this blanket in-camera approach that doesn't explain to the public why these particular witnesses cannot testify in the open and what exactly is the cause. Is it the subject matter? Is it the witness themselves, their identity? All of that the media houses have contended needs to take place in a public process. So what we're seeing now is that witnesses are going to be dealt with case by case. That is at least the class of witnesses that are in camera. We have already seen an agreement with respect to the anonymized witnesses, although there was a challenge with the option of doing an intermediary. We'll see going forward as to how the Commission takes that aspect forward. But with respect to those in-camera witnesses, where they're going to state that they want to have their testimony in camera, where the public won't have access, at least the process that precedes it, Ayanda, will be transparent and open to the public, and they'll get an understanding as to why a particular witness has to testify in a particular manner. Remember, this is a structured approach at the Commission, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We're in phase 1 right now, where it is part of the tricky evidence, where a lot of these witnesses that are going to be coming through now are either investigators, they're part of the GCI ops, they are PKTT members themselves, so they need to be protected in order to give that evidence freely and fairly.
Fair enough. Kenny Mapanga, senior reporter, live to us from the Bridget Mabanda Justice College. Thanks very much indeed for breaking it all down for us. And if you've just joined us at 13 minutes towards 10 o'clock, we've just heard from the chairperson of the Madlanga Commission that they will continue with in-camera testimony for the remainder of the week. In other words, you and I, as members of the public, will not be privy to what is being shared at that particular hearing. And the reason for that is because of the substance of this evidence. Less to do with, I suppose, the identity of the witnesses. We've heard that what is likely to be shared has to do with ongoing investigations which are at an advanced stage.